Hi, everybody. We're happy to have you today to talk about version 5.12. It's been a long time coming, and we're excited to share some great details with you today. So just stand by, and we'll be starting shortly. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to give this one more minute. We got a lot of folks that are still joining in. They seem to be coming in by the second. So we'll give it just a couple more, and then we'll get going on this. So thanks for everybody's patience today. We're really looking forward to walking you through this, and hopefully everybody gets a little bit of value out of it today. All right, well, it's 2 o'clock. Hopefully we'll be kicking everything off here now. So with that, let's talk about version 5.11, 5.12. I think a lot of you folks, some of those folks that have been at the user conference last year, we talked a little bit about this. It's something that we've been working on for a while, and I know last year, late last year, we were had a version of this out to give people a brief introduction. And since then, we've been working diligently to make sure that it's really tight from an application standpoint. We've had a lot of folks from a data standpoint get into the application and report back on how it is. And so right now, we're very happy with the outcome of it and happy to share it with you moving forward. So thanks for your patience here. And we're going to get going here. So before we begin, I think a lot of you folks that have attended our webinars on a monthly basis and in the past, this webinar is being recorded. So, at the end of it, you'll have the opportunity to give us some feedback by taking a snapshot of the QR code with your smartphone. We'll also send you a link in terms of the follow-up email. This copy of this slide deck, as well as the recording, is made available tomorrow. And like every month, your mic is muted during the webinar. So thanks for that. And if you do have any questions, I think everybody is familiar with the Teams, pretty ubiquitous Teams chat window right now. So if you do have a question, please click the show conversation icon in the toolbar and then tell us who you are and what your question is in the message box. And then we'll triage those and we'll get back to you throughout the webinar or at the end. Okay? So now getting into it. Today's agenda. So we want to cover a couple of quick things with you in terms of, our commitment to you as a client. We'll get into product enhancements and updates, reporting enhancements, work that we've continued to do on platform modernization, our release schedule, actions that you will need to take moving forward. And again, that may be variable by client. Talk about release notes, client success tools to help you succeed, any questions, and then survey participation. So that's today's agenda, and with that, we'll get going. So first and foremost, I want to take a minute and talk about our commitment to you as a client. And so I think a lot of you folks know, that Agile has been working on, its product on an ongoing basis. It's something that continues to evolve day by day, month by month, quarter by quarter, and year by year. But fundamentally, our approach to the product and to its management is to provide a scheduled release at periodic times through the year. Typically, that's been on about a 4-month cadence. I know that, this release slipped a little bit from that. And, our goal is to get back on about a 4-month cadence moving forward with our product roadmap. The important thing to know about our commitment and about our product is this. And that is, from a support standpoint and a maintenance standpoint, when you're a client of ours, by having maintenance and support, you're covered. right? Our job is to make sure that your work, that any work with the application is covered. And part and parcel to that is FleetCommander's core modernization. So we've talked about it in the past. It may be a little nebulous to some folks, but fundamentally, the modernization is really a foundational change in the application. It moves us from a more classic code base, .ASP, into a .NET code base, which is a state-of-the-art framework from a technology standpoint. So a couple of key points here, and that is the modernization of this and the upgrade to that is provided at no additional cost to you. We cover that as part of your maintenance and support agreements, and we're proud to do that. And we like to differentiate ourselves because, a lot of our other competitors, when we look at them and how they run the business, they do charge for those fees, right? So they do say, hey, if we have a significant upgrade, we're going to charge you an upgrade fee. Or in some cases, they've made clients purchase a brand new release. And we are not those folks. So we want to make sure that our product is a quality product at the end of the day. And we believe that we've got a sound methodology to move in that direction. From a methodology standpoint, it's really designed foremost to be transparent to you. So what does that mean? I would say the vast majority of folks that are on this call, as well as all of our other clients, you probably haven't really noticed any changes in FleetCommander, and that's a good thing. Our job has been to make it transparent to you. So when you think about FleetCommander and what it does and how it works, sure, you may have noticed minor differences in terms of how a screen might appear, but fundamentally the functionality remains the same. It's very consistent. It's not designed to change. And so our goal is to make sure that anything we've done with the application minimizes your risk while keeping your operations running at 100% and your data secure. Those are very important tenets for us. When we get through wrapping .NET up, and right now we're probably at the 98% standpoint of the application. There's a couple of things that we're going to be tweaking and releasing in the next release, but fundamentally we're there. It means that the application is now written in a modern code base. And it's going to provide you with increased speed, capability, and stability, throughout your organization. So those are all great things, and we're proud to do that. The .NET, transition also allows us to do other things in FleetCommander. So, by adopting a new code base and by adopting something that's state-of-the-art, we're looking forward to introducing, many more robust features that are going to help you manage your fleet a lot better. And then lastly, overall stability and security. So, software is only as good as it's stable and secure, and we believe that FleetCommander is the best application for that. It's a highly stable application, and it's a highly secure application. So those are things that we, again, hold near and dear to our hearts, and we think that those are very important things at the end of the day for all of our clients. Okay. Now, we'll get into some of the product enhancements and updates. And again, if there's any questions along the way, please feel free to add those into the chat box. So first and foremost, vehicle import tool. So the vehicle import tool, this has been a top request of a lot of clients. I think everybody knows that Fleet is a very flexible business in that vehicles come, vehicles go. You always have to make changes to what's in inventory, whether it's going out, coming in. And as a result, when we looked at FleetCommander and how it was architected, one of the things is you had to kind of manually, add those vehicles one over one within the application. We certainly recognize that that wasn't the most ideal way to do things. And so we've been working diligently to create a vehicle import tool, and a lot of clients have asked for that, and we're proud to deliver that right now. So what this does is this provides system administrators the ability to batch import vehicles into FleetCommander. So you just have to recognize a couple of things. We're adding vehicles, we're not updating vehicles. So that's a really important item to understand, right? So you can add vehicles in the system, but not update existing vehicles in the system. We provide you with two different kinds of import files to allow this to work. One is Excel-based and one is a tab-delimited text-based. We'll get into those in a little bit more detail. And again, as we start getting into the process of how this works and what it does, there are a couple of things that you really need to keep in the back of your mind. And that is The files that we provide to you, whether it's Excel or text, they are sample files, and they do have sample data in them. You have to adhere to the import rules, and we'll talk about those in a minute. The template must have all required fields in order to successfully import, and it must include all columns to ensure a successful import. So, obviously what that means is when you download the template, you're going to see that it's got, many columns. You can't just pick and choose which columns you want to import in. It's a structured import, meaning it's always going to look for the same columns in the same place. And as part of that, some of those require data and some of those don't require data. Okay. So getting into the import tool itself. So, once you navigate, to the tool, you're going to see that there's two files available to you. It's going to be an Excel file and there's going to be a text file. So again, there's, brief screenshots below here about each template, the Excel version and the tab delimited text. Personally, my favorite is the Excel version. Everybody's used to it. It's very, very easy. You click on the link, it downloads a file, you start entering data in it. The caveat here is that if you look at this example here, you can see that, yep, there's sample data in here. So once you open it up, just make sure you delete the sample data before you try and import it into FleetCommander. While you can use the tab delimited text, there's a couple of more steps in terms of getting that import ready. So the Excel is the easier and preferred version to use from that standpoint. Okay. Now, getting into the import tool itself, as you can see here, there's probably 20 or so fields plus or minus where data is required. So regardless of what the asset is at the end of the day, you must have some data in each of these fields. And so the important things to consider are when you look at your data set, you've got things like sites, locations, asset types. Those must match the system value. So it's always important, because you're a system administrator, you can look at the site table, the location table, the asset types, and you can figure out what asset you have. If you need to add new data, you can add new data, but fundamentally, all of those values must match. When you try and import the file, the system will validate against those, and if it finds an error, it's not going to allow you to proceed. So the rest of them, again, we've given you some minor examples, and again, you can look at these, as you download a copy of the file template. But fundamentally, when you get into things like acquisition value, it's a number. Expected age is a number. Miles is a number. Categories like eligible for manual or auto or automatic approval, those are all yes, no's. Self-checkout, yes, no. So again, you can see those things as you look at the GUI itself, okay? And then, just the basic expected age in miles is really, expected miles per month is really just age in miles divided by months. So again, easy data. Just make sure that you keep it consistent. And you may ask yourself, well, why do I care about some of these things? Fundamentally, these are values that the system uses further, down the road. So if you want to look at your vehicle age, it's going to be instrumental in terms of calculating where the vehicle is versus what the current date times are. Okay, same thing with mileage. So again, some very important things just to remember. Your template has to include all required fields. So all of these must be in the template. You have to make sure that you use values consistent with your configuration and table setup. And if the values don't match, you're going to get an error when you try and import the file. And we'll walk through those in a minute. In terms of the vehicle import tool, now we've got a number of other fields that are optional. And again, there are some caveats to some of these. When you get into owner, user, or department, again, you must have a department value or a username that's in the system. So again, it's going to validate against those. Same thing with responsible user or department. It must be validated data against what's in the system. All right. Fuel types must match the system. While we have 20 custom fields available, those are going to show up as individual columns in the import template. So we haven't declared those, in this optional fields, but fundamentally there's, custom fields 1 through 20 that are available. And then other things, depending upon what your business is and how you're using FleetCommander, whether you've got maintenance plans associated with the vehicle, account numbers, if you are depreciating it, salvage value percentages, anticipated CPI. So again, if you buy a vehicle and you have a CPI that says what it's going to cost the next time, you can put that in, and whether or not you're depreciating it or not. So again, always important to match your data and make sure that your data is consistent with your setup. All right. Now, for the next steps, once we get to the point of having a file, so in this case, we're going to say, we're going to, again, go to the import, we're going to choose a file, we're going to pick a template, we're going to download the template, right? We're going to enter in our data in. And then once we enter in our data and choose to import it, it's essentially the same thing. All we're doing is selecting the file and then importing it. And once you import the file, you can see that it'll show up to the right of the choose file button. So again, typical standard Windows import process, right? You pick a file name, you click OK, and it shows up. So again, once we've done that and we see the file name that we created, we can then select next. In the system, we'll do a couple things at this point. So first of all, it needs positive confirmation. So it's really important that you recognize that you're making significant changes to your system, right? We want to make sure that you go through a confirmation process and say, yes, I want to do this. I want to import this data into my system. So you have to click yes. Once you do that, the file will only be imported if all the records are in the right format. So again, as we talk about it, it's important to look at the template to understand what the fields are and what the values are in the template and make sure that your data is consistent to that. And once that's done, and again, the vehicles have to be incremental, so they can't already exist in FleetCommander. Otherwise, you'll see that there are some errors that will show up. And then lastly, you can see in this case, here's an example where we've said, let's put a file in place, let's import a file. And you can see in this case, we've already got an asset number that exists in the system. So it'll tell us that, yes, there was one row that was correct and one row that was an error. And it's going to tell you the row that was an error. So the important thing to remember here is when you're looking at the file, if you have any errors because the data exists, the validations aren't correct, i.e. you've got a site that's not in the system or a type that's not in the system, you're going to have to correct those and either correct the file or add the data to the system to match what your desired outcome is. And then once you do that, you can then re-import the file. So you can change the file, you can basically modify the file, save it, and then reprocess the file, okay? And select it again. And in that way, once it passes muster, you'll see that it'll provide you with a list of the validated records. So in this case, it says, yep, I've got 2 records that I want to add into the system, because those records have been validated. Now, the important thing to remember here is, and this is where, again, because everybody's system is a little bit different, you have to assign one access group and one usage type to each of the records in your import. So, if you're importing a big data set and it potentially has, a group of vehicles that have specific access groups and specific usage types, you may have to import the data in multiple batches, right, to make sure that it's correct. Alternatively, you could just pick one and then go up into the system and edit it. But again, it really depends on how big the data set is at the end of the day. If you've got, 2 records or 5 records or 10 records, you could pick the 1 or 2 and then, handle the exceptions within FleetCommander just by editing the record. So again, you got to make sure that you do that. And again, the thing to remember is whatever you select, gets applied to all of the records in the batch. So you can't pick and choose which records have, for example, a standard usage type versus a chauffeur usage type versus disaster response. They all get the same values. Okay. So again, big tip. Again, if you need to have different ones, think about, taking your import and parsing it into multiples and then assigning the right access groups for each specific batch. Okay. And then lastly, once you get to that point of assigning it, all you need to do is complete the import. And it's going to tell you that it's processed, the requisite amount of records. So at this point in time, whatever you've imported should match at the end. So if you had 2 records, you should always have positive confirmation that 2 records were imported. So that's always important to look at. Okay, if there's any other result there, you probably want to reach out to us on the support side so that we can investigate that further. Okay. So now comes another great enhancement to FleetCommander that we've been working on for a while. And this has to do with vehicle replacement. So, this is another top request that clients have made, and we're pleased to introduce phase 1 of this process. We expect that this is going to be kind of a multi-phase initiative as we continue to build it out and add more and more capabilities to it. But fundamentally, the base, the MVP design at this point is we've created a points-based system that allows you to have a fair amount of configurability between the categories that you're going to see. And so from a point standpoint, we're calculating this and aggregating this based on a higher is bad, lower is good methodology. So, as you start assessing your vehicles, you can define the categories, in as much detail as you really want. But again, try and keep it so that it's manageable and easy to use. But fundamentally, we're starting off with, age of the vehicle. So how old is it by year? The odometer, so miles, and then the condition. And we'll talk about the condition a little bit more and what that really means. We've also added some changes to the vehicle profile to include a replacement condition as well. So for all of these things, they're all going to kind of pull together to give you that replacement report. So I think it's going to be something that folks are going to find very valuable as they start looking at and assessing their vehicles. We'll talk a little bit more about TCO at the end, but fundamentally, those are things that will eventually weave their way into the replacement model as well. Okay. So now to start with, configuration, as I mentioned, it's a menu-driven item. It's in the configure menu. So again, it's system admin, level of access. And so what you need to do is, configure vehicles and replacement. And this is going to give you access to tables for categories where you can define the age, where you can define the meter and the replacement condition. So from a model standpoint, we're taking each of those segments and we're adding them together to determine the total points in a category. So whether it's an excellent category, it might be less than 20 points, where it's a good category, it might be less than 40 points, et cetera, right? If it's a poor category, it might be, 100 points, right? Something like that. So again, we'll see this in a minute, but fundamentally what the tool does is it allows us to define a range, and all ranges behave the same way. So the key piece here is when you're defining the ranges, you've got a minimum value less than or equal to, and then an upper value where it's less than whatever that value is. And I'll show you that, in the next screen, and we can talk about it. You can have the multiple same points for each range. So again, you may get to the point where we say, well, poor and unsafe vehicles could be the same. You could grade them exactly the same, or you could have them differently. But fundamentally, the thing you want to remember is the fewer points means the better condition. So those are the vehicles that you want to focus on, and those are the vehicles that you want to keep. So here's an example of the vehicle age categories, okay? So again, you can see that this is based on the year of the vehicle. So we're starting with, what are the really exceptional vehicles? So those are things that are greater than now and less than 2 years old. And then the next range is greater than or equal to 2 years and less than 4 years, greater than or equal to 4, less than 6, so on and so forth. So as you look at this, the nice thing about it is, depending upon what your model is, you can define your points, using these little, kind of sliders and fields to determine, what that means to you. So you could say, well, if a vehicle is less than, 2 years old, I want it to be 10 points. So you may be a 10, 20, 30 kind of shop, or a 1 through 10 shop, or a 1 through 20 shop, whatever that may be. But fundamentally gives you the flexibility to do that. Okay. Then the next thing is that as we get into mileage is really the same thing. So when you think about the way that this goes together, one of the strategies that you really want to think about is consistency of your data. Consistency is always important. So, for example, when you think about your ranges, right? Your initial range is anything greater than 0 and less than 2. Theoretically, if you're a fleet and you're running 12,000 miles a year, well, your range should be something greater than or equal to 0 and then up less than 25,000, as an example. So it's always good to try and keep consistency in your data and understand how your data relates to each other. That's really important for you, because otherwise, if you don't, then you're going to start getting some potentially odd results. If you had a situation where 0 to 2 years was one, but then your first one was 50,000 miles, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, unless you had a population of vehicles that were really high use vehicles, as an example, okay, like police or something like that, blue light or police. And then lastly, condition. So condition categories, these are the condition of the vehicle. So fundamentally, everybody looks at a vehicle on a regular basis, whether it's quarterly, annually, semi-annually, whatever that may be. And again, typically there's an assessment done. Is it an excellent vehicle? Is it a good vehicle, fair, poor, or unsafe vehicle? And so what we've done here is we've provided the capability where we can define a category and then set it as a default. So we have the ability where we could say, these are the categories that are active. So you can pick these from a vehicle, and then this will be a default category. So if you add a new vehicle into the system, it'll show up as excellent. Now, the important thing to remember is that when we introduce this capability, you're not going to see a value on your vehicle, okay? And we'll get into this in a minute. But fundamentally, what you'll have the ability to do is you'll have the ability to set it. The system will assume it's good until you tell it otherwise, all right? So that's one thing just to keep in the back of your mind. And you can see on the vehicle profile, we've added a couple of fields here. So not everything goes into replacement reporting for obvious reasons. So you've got the ability to say, does this go into replacement reporting or not? And then what's the condition? So the intent here is really to say, if you bring the vehicle into the shop, or if the shop is doing something, they have access to the vehicle record, they can do the inspection. They can say, yep, it's an excellent vehicle. It's a good vehicle. It's a fair vehicle. It's whatever it is. And then they can set that as part of the normal process to update that. All right. And again, as we look at this, it's important that, from a configuration condition standpoint, is it will match the configuration options that you've set up. So that's a real important piece there. Okay. And it does display the defaulted option to start. Now, how does it all come together? So as I mentioned previously, we're taking the sum of age, meter, and condition, and then determining what the sum of the point values are, and we're assessing it against these categories. So, if we're saying that things are, 0 to 2 years is a 1, and less than 25,000 miles is a 1, and replacement condition is excellent as a 1, that's going to show up as the excellent category. So again, you can define this any way you want. So if you decide that your category is excellent, it's going to start with greater than or equal to 0. And if you make this 20, that's fine. Once you go to the next category, you're going to see greater than or equal to 20 up until you decide what that next value is, 40. This could be greater than or equal to 40, 60, et cetera. So again, as you define the upper limit of the parameter, it's going to be the lower limit of the next parameter. So that's important to know. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. And then reporting. So, like all FleetCommander reports, we've tried to make it really, really flexible for you. So we've included a replacement report now where you can drop this data into either HTML or Excel. Obviously, Excel gives you more flexibility than HTML. So you probably want to, put that into Excel and give you the ability to kind of slice and dice your data as needed. But fundamentally, it's all parameter driven, where you can pick specific sites, specific locations, specific usage types, specific models. years, makes, colors, etc. So again, as you're thinking about your fleet, this report, the way it's designed, it's going to give you lots and lots of capabilities around, assessing your fleet, looking at your fleet. The other nice thing about it is that if you do have vehicles that are unavailable for whatever reason, maybe you're getting rid of them, maybe they're being disposed, maybe they've been disposed, but they're still in the system, you've got the ability to kind of take a snapshot of what those look like and then compare them to the more current inventory. So great capabilities here. And again, just remember that replacement condition here, it's going to match however you've set it up in your table. So it's all related data at the end of the day. And again, it's under reports, it shows up under assets and then replacement condition, right? In terms of the report, when you look at this, it's going to be grouped by the categories. We'll show an example of it in a minute, but fundamentally, you've got, different kinds of fields in here. So it'll aggregate your data by the category. So excellent, good, etc. And again, you're looking at things like status, name, year, replacement points, year, meter replacement points, condition, etc., and then total. So it's trying to give you all the information that you need to make informed decisions about your fleet and about where you need to focus on, in terms of, optimal, management of those assets. And again, lower equals better vehicles. And this is an example of what that report looks like. So again, just a brief snapshot of it. You can see that it's got a lot of categories, or I should say a lot of columns of data in here. So it carries over some of the information, from the asset dump report, but fundamentally it focuses on, the replacement data on the left side of the report, and then the other asset data on the right side of the report. But you can see that it's got an awful lot of data in here, including your public and private notes. So you may have private notes in here that says, this is a 1. It's good because, it's used heavily or whatever it is, right? So you've got those abilities to have that data in here, okay? So let me just take a second and talk about phase 2 plus. So, these are the categories that are under consideration right now. And again, if this is something that you use as an organization, we would love to hear from you. Because again, your input helps us drive the bus, so to speak. So if you tell us that, hey, we really like replacement modeling and we really like doing the points assessment, but we have the ability, we have the need to do X, Y, and Z instead of service and reliability, great, we would love to hear from you. Because again, at the end of the day, we solicit our clients, we want to understand how you're running your business, and we want to understand the value of the data and how you use it and what you use. Fundamentally, when we look at things like categories under consideration, it's service. So it's based on, vehicle mission and use, reliability, how many work orders, how many times did it show up in a shop in a year, potentially. So again, if you're not a maintenance user, you may have different factors that you want to use to that, and we'd love to hear from you there. Obviously cost. So again, if you're doing things like work orders as a percentage of acquisition costs, which a lot of folks do, you may have other metrics that you use there. And then, we're thinking about other flexible considerations. So whether it's a sustainability metric or a greenhouse gas-based metric, based on, how much fuel consumption, those would be good things to have. From a design standpoint, the thing you want to remember is that all the ranges, they'll all behave the same way. So again, it's a point-based system where it's bound by a lower and an upper range. And again, you can't overlap the ranges, but you can have the same points in multiple ranges. So, again, as you look at this, you could say, if you have something that's, poor or unsafe, they could have the same point value, fundamentally. Obviously, where you have better vehicles, excellent, good, fair, etc., you want those to have specific point ranges. So just keep that in the back of your mind. All right. Phase 2, again, so we'll just continue building phase 2 on phase 1. So we look at this as an aggregation. So as we add new capabilities to the tool, it'll just be an extension of phase 1. We'll continue adding those to it. I want to just take a quick minute before I get into TCO? I see we've got a couple of comments in chat. At least I think we do. So I want to just take a second and just talk through this for a minute, and that is, question is, can you differentiate the vehicle uses in the vehicle replacement? So meaning vehicles that stay on campus only. So again, as we look at that, that will be a phase 2 item where you have the ability to create a category that says might be local, might be on campus, and that will allow you to track that. Okay, or you may be able to do it based on mileage. So average trip length greater than or less than X or greater than Y. So right now, replacement condition is not on a work order. It is something that we're thinking about in terms of maintenance. We are doing a lot of maintenance changes. I think some of you folks may know that we're embarking on that. And that's something that should be on a work order, because that would be the logical place for it. You bring the vehicle in the shop, you do the assessment, you set the grade, and that would be a great place. So thanks for that comment. Greatly appreciated. Okay. So let's see. Next item. So TCO enhancement. So I think a lot of you folks know that we've been working on TCO for a couple of releases now, and it continues to get better and better and better. It's a great tool. It gives you lots of flexibilities and capabilities in terms of managing total cost of ownership of your fleet and of your vehicle. It's really exciting because, when you think about how we all manage fleet vehicles, you've got the ability to calculate, depreciation / replacement funds. You can use salvage values. You can use CPIs. So that you can really fine tune what has to go into funding the next vehicle fundamentally and what the impacts are to the budget. We've got the ability to allocate overhead. We've got the ability to, manage insurance. So those are all great things. We've also got the ability to bring in lots of kind of disparate data into the system. So, if you think about running the fleet at the end of the day, you've got the overhead expenses, where you got your fixed costs and then you've got your variable costs. So, if you're bringing fuel in, you can bring fuel in, you can bring your maintenance expenses in, you can bring on all the miscellaneous expenses in. So at the end of the day, when you start managing TCO, you've really got a well-rounded picture about what TCO actually is and how it works. So continue to build on enhancements here. Fundamentally, the work has been to extend some of the data outputs and the output formats. So folks have been asking us, in addition to HTML and Excel, just a CSV, so a text format. And so now we've got a CSV format, which folks should really like. The other thing too is, and again, this isn't necessarily related just to TCO, but throughout FleetCommander, and that is, when you're running a report in HTML is constrained by however the server is structured. So if you're trying to run a report and it's got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of data, you may have an issue outputting that data just because of the physical size of it. So again, good rule of thumb, if you're trying to run a report and it's got a lot of data in there, like thousands and thousands of rows of data, always opt for Excel or CSV, not HTML. So that's just a helpful tip there. Okay. The other thing that we've done too here is in terms of TCO enhancements about kind of the posting utility. So previously it was fairly limited. We started with the first version of the product where we were really looking for transactions. Show me things between A and B, and there's a reporting period. So again, the goal would be you could set a starting date and an ending date, and then a period date that it was applicable to. So for example, if you think about how a lot of folks manage their expenses from a budget standpoint, they may run a report in, let's call it September here, in order to be used to aggregate things that happened in August. So, we created this initially to provide a transaction date range and then what period that applied to. So now, when we get into this, we've got lots of other capabilities. So we've added, in addition to the dates, we've added the categories, the subcategories, specific sites, specific locations, and specific assets types, and a specific asset. So again, if you really want to fine tune it and you really need to run it for a specific asset, well, now you have the ability to run it for a specific asset, whereas previously you were running it for a group of assets. So some really great capabilities and functionality on that one. Okay. So the TCO mapping tool. So we're not going to cover a lot of depth of this for obvious reasons. And again, what the TCO mapping tool does is it provides the ability for you to take transactions in TCO and map them into billing. So because there's lots of different billing algorithms and exports, we're telling you contact support. If it's something you want to investigate, please contact support to see how it fits into your model. Because again, since everybody is a little bit different, you need to be cautious about, what the potential impacts of it are. So that's step one. If it's of interest, contact support, and they'll help you understand the nuances of it. Okay. The other thing too is that when you think about TCO, because you have that ability to bring data in a couple of different ways. So if you're using the fuel module, you can import fuel into FleetCommander, and that'll post into TCO. If you do work orders, the work orders will post into TCO. So you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're not duplicating your charges. So just understand that however you're managing your data, there's a source of the data and there's only one source of data. You're not entering fuel transactions in the fuel table and then you're adding them separately into the TCO table. Anything in fuel goes into TCO, anything in maintenance goes into TCO. However, if you're not using those, then you can bring those charges into TCO, okay? Oops. What's going on here? Okay. Some additional program changes here. Now, we've made a couple of changes to manage vehicles and manage users. So, once you start getting into version 5.12 and 5.13, you are going to see some differences in terms of what the screens look like. So one of the big changes that we made in 5.12 is the cursor focus. So previously, if you remember, if you opened up a table, the cursor focus would be on the asset name. So now we've changed that. Some people like that, some people didn't like it. So now we've made it, you can pick wherever you want to go. So we're gonna go with that at this point in time. A lot of people seem to want more flexibility there, instead of it showing up in the asset name field and then have to move the cursor. The table will now open up and you can basically set the focus wherever you want to set it. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing though that we've done is, and this is a really, kind of a top request for a lot of folks too, is I want to see the last mileage date and the last mileage on the managed vehicles interface. So yes, I agree with that 100%. And now we have it. So hopefully this is going to help everybody when they start looking at their data. They don't have to drill into a record or run a report. They can just see, exactly when the data, when the last mileage date was and what the value was. And again, like any of these columns, you can sort them ascending or descending by clicking on the column name. All right. So that's a really great enhancement there. And again, the username, manage users, it's the same thing. We've changed the field focus on the table so that once you open it up, you pick where you want to go rather than it focusing on the username. Okay. Late return reservations. So this was a really important change for a couple of reasons. Previously, when we go off and we look at analytics of the system and we try and figure out how are you using your vehicles, what's vehicles in use. There was an issue where late reservations stopped getting counted on whether it was a vehicle in use, and that was kind of fundamentally a flaw in the logic. So what we've done is we've changed that, and we've changed it in a couple of places actually. So now when you start thinking about late returns, they're now counted in vehicles in use because they are in vehicles in use. And so you see that it impacts the vehicle use dashboard. So anytime you see that, now we'll see vehicles in use. And so again, it's going to impact your data on the right side, where you look at all of your different types and availability. And it's also going to impact the activity table. So when you start looking at your activity, even though it's late, it's also going to show up as vehicles in use. So that should really tie the data out, a whole lot better, from that standpoint. Okay. This is another top request. In fact, I was at a client about a week ago, and they said, "Oh man, I would really love it if we could see the password. We got really complicated passwords, and people always forget their passwords. And it's like, we want to be able to see." And it's like, "Got you covered." And so I walked them through this, and I said, "Look, this is kind of another thing that we've done. You got a little toggle now on the kiosk when this is rolled out, and you'll be able to basically say show password or not, and it's going to allow you to user to see their password." So hopefully that should help the process quite a bit, and enable folks to log on if they've made a mistake, especially in the complex password area. Okay. Another thing that we've done is a lot of folks, on the call today, they use OAuth, which is a identity management software. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to, it allows the user to know whether or not they've got a profile or not. So because it's an automated process at the end of the day, it's important, to let the user know, hey, you either have a profile or you don't have a profile. So from that standpoint, what this does is it basically tells the user, hey, you don't have a profile and you need to contact the applicable organization to get signed into the system or to get placed into the system. A couple of other changes that we've made: content and documents and content manager. So we found an error previously where some of the links weren't being rendered properly. So you would try and do something, delete a record, and it would say, hey, I don't know what that is. I can't find it. And it's fundamentally because there was an issue with the link, as noted here. And so what we've done is we fixed that. So now all of the links should be sorted out, and there should not be any issues deleting content from this area anymore. So if anybody has tried this, once they get 512 and they do have issues, please let us know. But otherwise, we do believe that this is a corrected item. For those of you that are using maintenance and parts, this is really a biggie, because what was happening, on the part, when you look at a part record, you weren't getting the part number, you were actually getting a record number, which didn't make a lot of sense to folks, right? They would say, I don't recognize that part number. And so what would happen is we've changed it so that it now renders correctly. Instead of it rendering the record number, it's rendering, the part description here. So much better and logical. Talk a little bit about reports. So as I mentioned previously, vehicles in use, late returns. As you can imagine, there are cascading effects in terms of a couple of reports. So what we've done is we've gone through the system and mapped that out, and we've corrected the motor pool utilization. There should also be a change in the motor pool utilization by asset type. So again, these reports will now be corrected so that they're much more accurate in terms of recognizing, the vehicles in use and the hours in use. And again, you can see motor pool utilization by asset type and the motor pool utilization. Those are the two fundamental reports that are impacted here. Okay. A couple of other things, and again, because folks are getting more into total cost of ownership and managing depreciation and replacement fund within FleetCommander, we've enhanced the data dump report so that now we've got really a couple of different things going on. We've added account numbers. So many clients use account numbers in terms of managing their fleet and where the costs go, where the vehicles roll up to. As part and parcel to that, they also have, when calculating replacement fund, salvage value. So again, sometimes people depreciate it to zero, sometimes it's 20%, because they know that they're going to be able to sell the asset at the end of its life, whatever that may be. If they're trying to plan for the future, they want to, bake in some kind of a CPI So again, if they think it's going to be a 5-year replacement, they may want to increase it by a couple, 10, 20, whatever percent per year, and then whether or not they depreciate it. So again, the nice thing about Fleet Commander is you could get to the point where you put an asset on the books, you could run it for, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and then you could get to the point where somebody decides, you know what, we're not going to run that vehicle anymore for whatever reason. Maybe there's a problem with it. Maybe it needs some major work, whatever that may be, and they decide not to depreciate it. So you can suspend the depreciation and then restart it again. So lots of great capabilities on that, and certainly more easily allows you to see exactly what's going on with the vehicle. So that's great stuff. And another good one, missing mileage. So this was always important because people wanted to know, well, where are the vehicles? So when you ran this report, you had to go vehicle by vehicle to try and figure it out. And so now we've got the site and the location, and that makes sense. So hopefully that's going to, provide a lot of flexibilities to folks. So somebody asked a question about, is the account number the same as the VIN? So the account number is not the same as the VIN. So the VIN is the vehicle identification number. That's a separate field on the asset record. The account number is more of a financial accounting code that's used by the organization to categorize where the vehicle may roll up to. And again, it could be a department code, an account code. In the example that I showed you a minute ago, you can see a lot of these are pretty complicated account numbers. And so in some organizations, it's a segmented code where it could be, the fund, could be a fund code, it could be an account, an object code, an org code, etc. So they are fundamentally different. Okay. And then a couple of other things that we've done. And that is duration in days. So we've changed the billing report. So there's some, changes to billing report where there was an issue in terms of how the correct number of days were being calculated. So we fixed that. We've made some changes in terms of the vehicle usage reports on the reservation usage type filter. So again, hopefully these changes make it a little bit easier and certainly more accurate. So again, it's all about making sure that the data is correct and accurate for what we're doing. And we also fixed some issues that we noticed with the wrapping of it. So there was a wrapping issue in terms of the labels and the types, and so now that's been corrected. Excuse me, we made a change to the maintenance to the mileage cost report. So when you ran it for an extended period of time, you were getting some funny results. And so now that's been corrected, where it was looking at the dates incorrectly. So now that's been fixed. And the same thing with aging by time. So when you looked at aging by time, there was an issue with the site logic. So now we fixed that. So hopefully those things are behind us. This is a biggie. This is always a favorite of mine, honestly, because I used to pull my hair out. But I hate merge cells because it just makes manipulating data in Excel all the more difficult. So as some of you know, previously we had an issue, not an issue, but we had designed the report so that when you got permissions, it used merge cells. And it just makes manipulating the data, just a little bit more difficult because you got to unmerge the cells and do some extra steps before you can actually do something with it. Now that's been taken care of. So that's a big change. And you can see, the impact of it between what we did in the past and where it is today. And, with that, from a report standpoint, it's important to know that all the reports at this point have now been upgraded. So everything in Fleet Commander, and again, big challenge, big piece, everything needs to be rewritten. Every line of code and every report needs to be looked at, analyzed, and refactored into .NET, from ASP. So when you look at the way that this is, we've got, 80 plus reports in Fleet Commander. This is a subset of those, and now we're all done. So that's a big step in the right direction in getting us to 100% compliance in .NET. And that's it in terms of the upgrades. Talk a little bit about release schedule right now. So from a release standpoint, the beta release is ongoing. We've got, I believe, 4 or 5 clients that have been testing Fleet Commander version 12. beginning mid-March, and we're just about to wrap that up. Production release should start within the next, week or so, 10 days, certainly by the end of April. You'll be notified when we start doing the releases, but we do expect that to happen anytime now. And then for self-hosted clients, once we get done releasing version 5.12 to all of the Agile hosted sites, we'll make a package available to you, and that'll be on the support portal for you, and you'll be notified in advance of that. Okay. So with .NET has some challenges and some changes that we all need to be cognizant of. And so this is something that everybody needs to think about in terms of how you're using FleetCommander. So one of the things is that, many of you folks, as we've implemented FleetCommander, we've extended its capabilities to do different kinds of things. We may have created custom forms within the application. We may have created custom reports or custom tools, whether that's to import data or to export data or custom reports, and other custom functions. So, the vast majority of clients that use FleetCommander have some aspect of that going on within their sites. And it's great because what it does is it greatly enhances FleetCommander's capabilities for you. It saves you time, it saves you money, it streamlines your operation, and it makes it very dependable, and takes the complexity out of managing complex data. So again, at the end of the day, having these things in the application is a good thing. It enhances your process and it, reduces your costs. However, with each of these, we now need to take a step back, and these all must be converted to .NET as well. So as I started, the presentation today, I talked a little bit about the .NET journey with Agile and the role of, your annual maintenance and support and what that means in terms of the .NET program. This area is a little bit different because, when you think about all of these things that we're talking about, typically Agile has only charged clients one time. So, if you've been a long-time Agile client, you may have been with us for 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, 2 years. It doesn't matter. But if we've done any of this for you, we need to take a look at whatever you're doing and whether or not they're still applicable. But fundamentally, each one of these things needs to be converted by Q1 of 2025. And there's a lot of benefits, right? So, the benefit of converting it's security and compliance. It enhances performance and scalability, right? So it makes it faster to run, easier to run, better to run. It provides long-term support, future proofing, and it's long-term cost effective. And again, the challenge of this is that as we continue through that .NET transition, the tools that we have within the application to process this data isn't supported forever. So at some point in time, we have to make a transition, which is a logical, jump off point, and that's the end of Q1 2025. So one of the things that we'll be doing is, we'll certainly be reaching out to you, but as a first step, what we've done is we've compiled a list of all of these things. So we've gone through all of our client accounts, how they're using the system, what they're using in the system, whether it's an active import, an export, a report, or a function. And then, clients itself, myself, Kathy, we will be reaching out to you to have a conversation about what you currently have and whether or not you still need it. And then based on that, we'll present you with some options. So whether that's converting it as is, so no changes in how it works, converting it but updating it for changes in your process, or stop using it. So regardless of what it is, we need to get through one of these three options to kind of make sure that your site and your work and your capabilities are all compliant to .NET. Okay. And so that's the next step. And again, we've started going through this. We have the list. We will be making contact, and happy to have the conversation and explain it more detail to you. Certainly from a cost standpoint, there is a cost to you, organizationally. So, again, the thing you got to remember is that when we did this work on your behalf, there was a one-time cost, and that was it. we've maintained the code, we've done the changes. So every time something happened within the industry, whether it was Microsoft updating a piece of code or somebody updating a browser, whatever that may be, or a security vulnerability, we've handled those along the way at no cost to you. And again, the thing that I have to reinforce here is that, we provided the work the first time in a scope of work that we agreed, and we did not charge annual maintenance or support for any of these things. And typically, our competitors charge 25% of whatever that original cost. So, you know, over time, we've saved you thousands and thousands of dollars fundamentally. So one of the things we need to do is take a step back, look at what you're doing, look at how you're using it, decide which option is applicable, and then we can help estimate the cost for you, in terms of what that means, and then any future maintenance and support. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do is create a process whereby you don't have to worry about this again. So we'll recode it, get it .NET compliant, and then we'll support it, using an annual maintenance fee. And we think that probably makes the most sense for everybody. As part of this package today, if you do have some thoughts or you want to, reach out in advance, you can do that. But as I mentioned, we'll certainly be reaching out to you as well, and certainly have been to some folks. And then release notes. So the last couple of bits of this are release notes. So I think, as everybody knows, we've got release notes that are available on the support portal. So as if you've got access to support, you can get the release notes. If you don't have access to the support portal, use the forgot password or contact support to get your credentials. Typically, implementation team will hook you up with the support portal as they go through the implementation process. So if you are currently undergoing implementation, you can reach out to them and they will get you access to the portal. And that way you can see, whatever those release notes are. And certainly we've got some other really exciting things that are going to be happening soon, in terms of introducing, knowledge base and things like that. So stay tuned for a few of those things coming due. And then lastly, kind of getting into, success. So, I think, as you've heard, from me and certainly from Kathy and others, within an Agile, we're really more than software. We are your business partner. And again, part of our job at the end of the day is to ensure that you're running your fleet using best practices. We've certainly got the team and the capabilities to help you achieve those goals. So whether it's, looking at your fleet holistically, what your mission and goals are, how do you benchmark, whether it's policies, plans, policy, management, technology. We've got all of those capabilities within Agile. So if you have any questions, please please reach out to us. We're happy to help you. I know that, periodically, we always like to reach out to you and have a conversation just to check in and see how you're doing. So it's always a good time to talk about those kinds of things when we have that conversation. And again, from a policy standpoint, we can certainly give you some best practices around cost control, chargebacks, assignments, the pros and cons of everything, as well as fleet size, and then delivery. So, certainly help us help you by letting us know what we can do to make your life easier and run better. I think you all know that we've got a great website. Mike and Anna, who manage our marketing, team, they're always trying to improve, the art, by having some great online resources. So webinars, user groups, peer sharing, etc. So again, some really valuable online resources that you can take advantage of. We've got an active fleet management blog, so please check that out. And Workshop Wednesday. So I think a lot of you folks know that we do Workshop Wednesday every month. It's a great session. You should all take advantage of it. Make sure you register. And it's always topical information. As I mentioned, we really want to hear from you in terms of what we can provide. And then Command 24. So last year we had our user conference at the University of Tennessee in lovely Knoxville. And this year we're going to be making our way to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So we hope you'll join us, the first part of October. It'll be a lot of fun. We had a great group last year. We had over 50 people and probably about 25 different organizations participate. So a real great, real great mix of folks that everybody, I think, took something away from. So it was really, really awesome. And so we hope that you folks can join us today. It's looking like a lot of fun this year. So got a great program lined up, and stay on the lookout for more. And again, just, Workshop Wednesday. I think a lot of you folks may know we have a YouTube channel. If you don't know, click the link, check us out. But there's a lot of content on here about all the different webinars and Workshop Wednesdays that we've done. So you'll find some really great stuff here in terms of how to manage your fleet, really from soup to nuts. And again, as I mentioned, we're always looking for more content from you. And then, lastly, please help us, help your peers. So, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have a story to tell. Everybody has a story to tell, right? And I think the interesting thing is that we would really like to hear from you about what your story is, and especially what your journey has been. It's always amazing to me that when I visit clients and you take a step back and you figure out where did they start and where are they now, it blows my mind as to how they're using the system and the kinds of benefits that they're getting out of using FleetCommander and vehicle sharing. I was at a couple of recent client visits, and they were saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by vehicle sharing, and you don't really think about what the impacts are until you take a step back and think about, well, how is it impacting my organization? And I can assure you it impacts your organization more than you think. So we'd love to have a conversation with you about how we can tell your story. And we're certainly happy to come meet with you and do a business review. We try and go through and visit all of our clients on a regular basis. So if you haven't seen us, you will be hearing from us at some point in the future, but it is our goal to visit all of our clients and do business reviews with you. So, again, thanks for all of that. And certainly let us know how we can help you there. And then just wrapping up, again, I think a lot of you folks know support. It's always best that if you have a technical FleetCommander issue, break fix, something's not working, reach out to support. That's what they're there for. They certainly log everything. So if you send an email or make a phone call, it gets automatically logged. And it's tracked cradle to grave. So they'll certainly, help you there. If it's something that ends up being, kind of on the edge of support, or maybe you need some new hardware or something, they'll pass it over to us, and we'll reach out to you and have the conversation with you about, well, what do you really need and what's going on? So, please use them as their first resort. And again, both Kathy and I, we're ready to help you from a consulting standpoint. So anything you need to talk about vis-a-vis fleet, we're your team. So thanks for that. And we certainly do enjoy speaking with you. And lastly, tell us what we can do to make it better. So if you would take a snapshot, give us some feedback, tell us what you're really interested in, and what can we do to make your life easier. And with that, any other last questions? Well, I don't see any other questions coming in on the chat. So with that, I think we're going to call the session a close. Thanks, everybody, for all your time today. I hope it was a valued session for you. We look forward to seeing everybody in the future. And again, if you do have any questions or we can be of help to you, please, oh, please let us know. Thank you so much for your time today.